This is the Big O Show. This is the Big O Show.
Good morning, sir. How are you doing, my man? You doing all right, Ira?
After yesterday, and even when nothing happens, Big O, with the trading deadline, you know how it is. You're monitoring everything. You're waiting for the phone to ring. You're checking in. You're texting other people. And it was really interesting because it's the rare trading deadline when your team, the Heat, did nothing. But basically, his future got reshaped by what happened around it in the Eastern Conference. So it was hectic. And again, the one thing, and I tweeted this out during the day, Big O, I don't understand why the NBA plays games on the day of the trading deadline when so many players are moving and not in place and teams are playing shorthanded. So save a little bit of that for me also. I'm going to have a long day coming up. So I just thought yesterday was really interesting because I think the Heat face a new set of challenges and yet went out last night and showed against the Pelicans that when the Heat are whole, they're pretty much up to any challenge.
Yeah, and that was a game where they kind of paced it where they were really never in doubt, even though there were times where, the Pelicans made a little run. It might have made it a little interesting, but it was like a game that they were in control of the entire time. It was just one of those. And by the way, PJ, what a tough son of a bitch. I mean, there really was no reason for him to play the second half. That's just him, character, and what he's made of, and old school and all that stuff. I kind of felt bad because at the beginning of that second half, you can tell that he had to kind of warm up a little bit because he was a little stiff. You know what I'm saying? But man, what admiration I have for that man yesterday. I mean, it just it grows and grows is what it is,
And yet, Big O, when you looked at that, and that's why I focused my blog at sunsentinel.com, my Winderman's view on that after the game, some people saw that as a negative, you still have questions because if PJ Tucker doesn't play, we don't know about Markieff Morris. There is not a backup at the position. There was thought they might get Thaddeus Young on the buyout market. He's not there. Probably the best buyout market candidate at power forward is Paul Millsap, who's been a shell of himself this season for Brooklyn. So, maybe we see more of what we saw end of first quarter, Dedmon Adebayo, start of the second quarter, Adebayo and Yurtseven. Maybe there's a little more big. But it seems like the Heat still are one piece short. Now, they can answer the questions if Markieff Morris comes back and is fully playable. Then they have depth at the position. Yesterday, they didn't have Caleb Martin. He certainly can take minutes at power forward. He has this season. But it is interesting. You get past the trading deadline, so 90% of the possibilities are off the board. But I do think they need one more piece. And there's a reason they traded KZ Okpala for nothing, for a meaningless 2026 second-round pick. They plan to fill these two roster spots. They will add something. Maybe it's someone out there I don't see, we don't see, but there are two more moves coming, including the move to move Caleb Martin from two-way contract to standard contract.
Yeah, right, exactly. That'll be one of them. So the other one would be that power forward position if they're able to fill. But here's the interesting part that's developed all throughout the year for them, which we didn't know this at the beginning of the year. First of all, we had no idea they would be this deep. But because you've been this deep, you're not in a hurry to bring back Oladipo. When Markieff Morris gets injured, you're not in a hurry to bring him back. When Kyle Lowry has a personal issue, you're not in a hurry to bring him back. Jimmy Butler can miss games at times. Bam has been able to miss games at times. And yet you're still one of the elite teams in the league in the entire time throughout all of this. That's been one hell of a luxury for them, Ira, that, as you're asking about Markieff now, when he does come back, that's the beauty of the Heat. They're not forced to bring anybody back because the record is just fine. And you're not behind the eight ball at all, like, let's say, the Lakers or somebody like that.
And it's interesting because I spoke to Bam Adebayo after last night's game about this. Bam entered the NBA in the 2017 draft. Every single trade deadline there. You didn't put enough sugar in that one? Is that why? I saw the little sour face after the last
no. Oh, yeah. It was lemon. Remember, the lemon in the
interesting. So when you look at Bam Adebayo, drafted 2017, every single trade deadline until yesterday was pretty dramatic. 2018, the Heat bring back Dwayne Wade. 2019, his good friend Tyler Johnson and Wayne Ellington are sent away in luxury tax moves. The year after that, the Heat offload a ton of players. Justice Winslow, Dion Waiters, James Johnson. The locker room changes. Last year, you're talking about a bunch of players being sent out. Kelly Olynyk, Avery Bradley, Chris Silver, Mo Harkless, Myers Leonard. This year, crickets. And what that tells you is the Heat sat in their suite at 601 Biscayne Boulevard and said to themselves, yeah, we got this right. We're in good shape here. Let's go out. Let's let the Nets panic. Let's let the 76ers panic. I'm sure we'll talk about that trade. Let's watch the Bucks go out and get Serge Ibaka or what's left of Serge Ibaka. We're pretty good shape here. We can make hay with what we have. And it was really interesting, the reaction from the players after the game when they said, hey, it's nice to see that the front office can look at us and say, yep, those guys are good enough. And you know what? When you win whatever it is, 19 of your last 28 games, you have a reason to feel that way.
Yeah, no, it's a lot of fun watching, this team, the way they've been able to play. Is CJ McCollum stuck there, by the way? Because, God, you almost feel bad for anybody that gets traded to that situation. Or is this just a stop on his way
No,
to?
he's going to be there. David Griffin is desperate to keep his job. We know about that. And Big O, here's the deal. If you inject Zion Williamson at his best into that mix, and you have Zion Williamson, or you have Brandon Ingram, you have CJ McCollum, you have not a team fighting for the play-in, but a team with legitimate playoff prospects. The thing is, we don't know a damn thing anymore about Zion Williamson.
Right, that's
we
what.
see
Yeah,
it more on commercials than we do in games. We don't know about his conditioning. We don't know if he gives a rat's butt of ever playing another game for the New Orleans Pelicans. So they're in a rock and a hard place.
actually, we do know about his conditioning. It's not very good. It's never been very good. And you know what? We rarely ever get things right in this world.
Right.
He's one of the ones we all got right because most of us were terrified of him, of being injury prone because of the way his body is kind of structured and all that, and the explosiveness he plays with. And man, that has been the case, whether it's the weight issue or the injuries, the things that people envision for him, all those concerns, they've all come to life. And there's also the character part of it, that he's not really a hard worker to kind of fight off that he has
that part. I don't know, but here's the parallel I would draw. Blake Griffin came into the NBA with the same concerns, injury prone. Blake Griffin did not play at all his rookie season. Blake Griffin, let's be honest, went on to have a very productive NBA career. We remember what was going on with Chris Paul and the Clippers, and his put up numbers over his career. So this is still so early.
But he had a lot of injuries too in his career also, Blake.
Right,
Blake
but he was productive enough that he got to an all-star level. So I think we have to sit back and wait on Zion a little, because it's way too early to just say that was a bad pick. I'm not so sure, Big O, if you redraft that year, you don't go ahead and take him number one anyway, because of all the players, he still has a chance to be that dramatic player, even though he weighs more than you and I combined.
I took Morant that day. Leading up to that draft, I was a Morant guy from day one, and I'll stay a Morant. I was right then, and I'm going to be right now. I'm staying John Morant every day of the week and twice on Sundays.
But
so
Zion is so unique for his position, even more than Ja, that I still think there's something there. I just don't think he ever wanted to be in New Orleans. He wanted to be in New York. He was talking about that, and it's just, David Griffin's just throwing anything against the wall. He's basically GMing for his job right now.
Although, isn't what Ja is also turning into something rare?
Oh, right? He's turning into a great explosive guard, which the NBA has seen before.
But he's a distributing explosive guard. That's really hard to find, actually.
No, I'm not saying he's not unique. I'm not saying he's not entering the pantheon of top 15 current or top 10 current players. He is. I'm just saying, don't call Zion a bust yet, because I think you have to give it some time. The good thing about the NBA rookie scale is you're kept with one team basically for 5 years. You have right of first refusal. There's still time for New Orleans to make it right if Zion wants to make it right. But enough of the McCollum trade. I'm sure you were on the air. I'm curious about your take on Simmons Harden and what you think that does to the Heat. Then I'll give you mine.
I think it makes the Heat their chances even better now, actually, because I don't think the Nets could actually maximize with Simmons. Now you put the more weight of the world on the other two guys, and one of them is super injury prone as it is. And Simmons is not a guy you really fear to kill you offensively. So, and on the flip side, the Sixers, I like what they were able to do. The only problem is I don't know if I could trust James Harden, in those situations anymore to be the guy to help you put you over the top. They still don't play enough defense. So either one of those clubs that I'm still gonna go the Heat. I think the Heat are clearly the best team in the Eastern Conference before these trades and after these trades.
I'm going to put Milwaukee right up there, and you can
Oh
see
yeah. No,
they're
you're right.
back
You're
and
right.
forth.
I'm sorry.
It's one game.
Yes.
Defending champions.
Yeah,
They
but
know how to
Milwaukee's
win. They added Serge Ibaka, basically at the cost of nothing. I
Yeah,
like
that was
Dante
good.
DiVincenzo, but he's been injured ever since that Heat series last year.
Yeah.
They won a title without him. I have respect for those two. I will change a little bit of your thinking here, though. I think the Nets were a defenseless mess before. First of all, Kevin Durant's one of the most underrated defenders in the NBA. He is a good to great defender when
Okay.
motivated.
Okay.
Ben Simmons is an awesome defender. Now, I don't know Ben Simmons after 10 months away from the game, what kind of defender
that's
he
the
is.
thing. Mentally, I don't know about
But
that
Brooklyn
guy.
right now is a better defense. Of course, they're a better defensive team when you bring in Ben Simmons and you get rid of James Harden. So you have to look at it that way also, that they did get better defensively. They're interesting. I still don't know about their depth. The thing is, they made a 2-for-1. They got Seth Curry. So with Joe Harris out, they have another shooter. But they have this cockamamie thing with Kyrie Irving only in road games. And unless that changes, it's so disjointed. And that's what drove Harden to distraction. The Sixers, I agree with. They were motoring with what they had. Yes, they didn't get anyone in place of Simmons all season. Embiid is having an MVP level year, probably right now with Nikola Jokic, a front runner for MVP. They would have been a tough out, but it would have been just a singular player. But I think it's interesting. I think what Philly did might have been more of a sideways mood because you don't know what James Harden you're going to get.
Yeah.
And we've seen his missteps in the playoffs also. He's a ball hog. So what does that do with Joel Embiid? Joel Embiid wasn't all that enthused with Ben Simmons handling the ball as much as he did. So that makes it interesting. There still are teams. And also, let's not forget about the Bulls. They're down a little now because Lonzo Ball is out, because Alex Caruso is out. They were very good when healthy. I don't know if they have enough for the playoffs, but I think continuity in our continuity rankings here on the Acura Pembroke Pines report, I would put the Heat, the Bucks, and the Bulls as my favorites in the East just because they are who we know they are. Can't say that about the Nets. Can't say that about the 76ers.
Yeah, the Bucks are the one team that I think can give the Heat the run in this conference. I think they've.
I think they'd be. I think if they get home court, they'd be favored in a playoff series. They're only one game behind right now, so that's going to go down to the wire. The Heat have another game remaining in Milwaukee, and the Heat might have to play to the last day of the season to settle things between them and the Bucks. I agree.
All right, so yesterday it was a Dolphin day in the sense that Mike McDaniel was introduced and did all of his press conferences. And it's funny because you cover a team that had to go through a transition of the way a franchise looked at the game. And then when the transition went to Spo gave them a different way of looking at the game, and the franchise has had to adjust, including, I'm sure, Pat Riley, who took his time to adjust also because he kind of straddled Spo with Whiteside and his older visions, which don't go with the new visions.
Sure.
And I thought of that because the correlation was Mike McDaniel. And Mike McDaniel goes out there, shows a lot of personality, and then talks about something. He gave us insights that we never got from the cyborg we used to have as a coach here. And he talked about how players have ADD, something that we didn't have to deal with 15 years ago, and how you got to come in and work with energy and make it creative and entertaining the way you teach them to keep them engaged and those kind of things. And you're thinking about today's kids and today's generations and how different they are from our older generations and all of that. And I saw a lot of correlation with what Mike McDaniel was talking about. And then I looked at it, I said, damn, the Heat went through this same kind of stuff when it was the Riley into the Spo era, and Spo with his new vision of how things need to be done because of what he was seeing that was going on. And I think McDaniel may have a little bit of that understanding of what today's players are, kind of like how the Heat has adjusted and adjusted so well.
Except the difference is, let's say, as the kids say, let's level this up one level.
Of
The
course.
difference is Eric Spoelstra has been working with Pat Riley, an
Of course.
icon, a legend. So what happened was this. Eric Spoelstra took, let's say there were 100 units of knowledge from Pat Riley when he started. And then he chipped away and he said, Pat, I want to replace these 10 precepts with mine. Pat said, okay, grudgingly. And then they won. Then he said, Pat, I want to change these 10 defensive precepts. And Pat said, okay. And they won. So it's been a subtle thing. But the lineage has been from the Grand Master, from Mr. Miyagi, however you want to put it.
Right.
It's a lot different.
The Jedi Master teaching the Padawan.
It's a lot different when you're saying, okay, Chris Greer, you love your roster. You put this together. You took Tua. And I'm going to pause right there. The one thing of this whole process that bothers me is, when Chris Greer sat down with his candidates, I don't even know how many they met with. It just seems like everyone got hired ahead of him. The whole thing was, when you were doing your interview, if you wanted the Miami Heat job, you had to say you love Tua, because that's the way you appease Chris Greer with his pick of Tua over Herbert. So you did that. So you have to sort of play pretend. Now, at some point, Eric Spoelstra with Pat Riley would go, you know what, Pat? You did a fine job putting my roster together, but I need to get rid of this guy and that guy. And Pat Riley said, Eric Spoelstra, you did a fine job winning. You can do that. It's not as easy right now for McDaniel to do that, because he has to pretend that everything Chris Greer did was right, when I think even you would be in the group that would say a lot of what Chris Greer did was awful. And it seems to me what the Dolphins did is they got the young coach who wasn't going to change things, who wasn't going to come in like a Nick Saban, or someone who's saying, you know what? And you've seen this all the time, Big O. After a year or two, the coach goes, I want personnel power. Adam Gase, someone like that, I want more personnel power. So I think it's different, because I think there still is a Dolphins power void. Is Stephen Ross a good NFL owner? So far, he hasn't shown that. Is Chris Greer a good personnel leader? So far, he hasn't shown that. So I think McDaniel is screwed, because he has two hands tied behind his back, has to smile. This, to me, and his press conference was the quintessential this. Everything is fine. Don't worry, folks. Everything is fine.
Kevin Bacon.
Better. But
Kevin Bacon, Animal House.
Exactly. So everything is fine, except there's only 32 of these jobs. So you say the right things to get one of those jobs. So I would not compare the Heat at all to the Dolphins.
No, I wasn't comparing it. What I was comparing is the coaching changing, where he talked about how today's players and how you reach them is different than I'm sure it was 20, 30, 40 years ago. And I thought it was really interesting that he gave us a little insight on the coaching angle and how things are different now from when he first started in coaching. And that's why I compared it to Spo, because his style is different than Riley. His principles are different than Riley. Even though he learned under Riley, he was smart enough to adjust with the times.
Yeah, but you know what? Certain coaches come off to certain players differently. In other words, Big O, there were players who swore by Brian Flores. There just were. You know what? There were players who swore by Nick Saban. You could talk to Jason Taylor about that. And then, of course, you hear Channing Frye on the other side. Channing Frye. And then you hear Channing Crowder on the other side of that, and what went on there also. So you can't appease all the players all the time. So what's going to be interesting is this. If, for whatever reason, a Chris Greer player doesn't appeal to McDaniel, does he have the ability to go in during camp and tell Chris Greer, I know you took a third-round pick on this guy, but I want to cut his butt. How amenable will the Dolphins be to that? And Big O, if they're not amenable to that, then this guy's screwed.
I think they will be to all of that. I think the idea is just it's really all about Tua. That's kind of what this is all about. It's fixing the offense, and the vision that they have in the front office. Is it the same as the coach? The coach that you had before did not believe in this quarterback. And so that's the difference. See, where I have a problem with all of this is that I can't actually tell the whole damn story. This is the part that eats me alive, when every time I'm talking about this, I can't tell you the whole damn story. And
Well,
that's
let me give you, let me give you the rest of that story. So, and again, not to get too
no, you can't
tangential.
actually, but
How
I'm good.
how many games, if two is off, is enough? In other words, we've seen what a poor start
Oh,
to the
this
season
season, this
has
season.
crippled. So you think a whole season. So you think if the Dolphins get off to 0-3 and three poor Tua starts, it doesn't matter. 1-6
Well,
with
I
four
mean,
bad Tua starts.
what are we talking about? Poor starts? Are we talking about like he's a disaster? Then I'm sure
He
that'll
can't
be a
throw the
problem.
deep ball. The offensive
Yeah,
line does get better.
that'll be a
They get
problem.
him better receivers. That's the thing is, I wonder when McDaniel would even be willing to consider pulling the plug. Hope it doesn't happen, but I think that's part of the equation also.
No, I know that. I just think this is. I think he has the vision the same as them of how. I mean, listen, I'm on their side actually. I agree Tua can be a winner, but you got to run it the right way. You got to do things that we see in other places. You got to give him Dalvin Cook in Minnesota or Derrick Henry or what they have with the Rams or what they have in New Orleans. You got to give him a good team around him that can block and can run, and then he'll be all right. I think he'll be a terrific quarterback after that. But if you give him an offensive line that can't block and a running game that's completely ineffective, he's not that kind of guy.
And
He
yet,
can't,
and yet, and yet,
he can't be Marino. He's not going to do that.
and look at
That's
what
not
happened
his
with the
game.
Niners, though. The Niners had an emerging rookie quarterback. That's McDaniel's team. And they just decided that for all of Garoppolo's flaws, he was good enough to get them closer to where they wanted to go, and they stayed in that direction. So you do wonder how much patience there might be because he comes from a team that was looking to play their rookie quarterback. And they
Yeah.
went away from that because they realized good enough is good enough if you have a great defense. So I think that'll be interesting also.
Yeah, well, Trey's not even close to ready yet, so they have no choice. Now they have to go ahead because they traded 3 first rounders for that kid. So they have no choice. They have to trade Garoppolo, even though he's the better quarterback right now for him. But they're going to have to do it because they have to find out whether the kid can play or not. They have no choice. They've put themselves in this corner now. They don't really know themselves if Trey Lance can play, and that's going to be interesting to see how that develops. All right, what are you working on the Sun Sentinel so folks can check you out?
I just published a story at sunsentinel.com about how the Heat didn't make any moves for the first time in 4 years, nothing major because they are confident in their own skin. Also in that story, Eric Spoelstra addressed KZ Okpala, said what he could have been, said, look, more than anything, it was the injuries. He simply never gained his stride. Eric was very candid about that. But in his Spoelstra-like style, he doesn't rip anyone on the way out the door like we've seen some other people in this town do. Then he said, you know what? The kid gets healthy. You never know. But they had to move off of that. Wrote that. Going to post a story later. LeBron James scoops up Jimmy Butler on the All-Star roster. So it's Butler against Spoelstra instead of alongside Spoelstra in the All-Star game. So what does Spo have cooked up for Jimmy? What's Jimmy going to do to F up Spoelstra in the All-Star game? That'll be interesting on the 20th. And then for my Sunday column, I'm going to look back at the trade deadline, sort of winners and losers, see how it shook out. But ahead of us, a really fascinating game with the Nets. Saturday, FTX Arena, 8 o'clock. Kyrie Irving does play. Durant is still out. The Nets enter, 10 or 11 game losing streak right now. It's crazy. The Heat could finish number 1 in the conference and play the Nets in the first round. So Saturday will be an interesting game.
And by the way, kudos to Dallas. They unloaded that Porzingis contract, dude. That was wow. That was great for them. They freed up some cash down the line. I don't know. Give him executive of the year already for that move right
Yeah,
there.
but the same executive also made the trade that brought him in. So I don't know if you want to exactly credit someone for fixing their own mistake.
That's true. That's a good point. But damn, I didn't think they would be able to unload that contract, man, because that guy's a sack of injuries. Holy crap. All right, follow him on Twitter at Ira Heatbeat and catch his exceptional work at the South Florida Sun Sentinel. And make sure you subscribe, please. Support our local journalists. They deserve it. Ira, thank you as always, my brother. Appreciate you.
We'll catch you on Monday with more of your anti-Latvian sentiment. Thank you, Big O.
You got it. Very good. There you go. That's a terrible contract, that Porzingis contract. All right, great stuff by Ira Winderman.